day, everyone. My name is Julius Christopher de Guzman, and let's talk about the Chapter 9 of Science, Technology, and Society with the title of Biodiversity and the Health Society. Let's talk first about the learning outcomes.
First is to discuss the concepts of biodiversity. Second is to determine the interrelatedness of society, environment, and health. Third is to perform a biodiversity mapping activity. And lastly is to appreciate the value of conserving biodiversity. Now, what is the meaning of biodiversity? The term biodiversity was first used by Walter G. Rosen in 1986. It comes from a Greek word bios and the Latin word diversitas. Bias is the meaning of life, while diversitas is the meaning of variety. Now, this means that biodiversity is the variety of life on Earth. What does biodiversity include? Biodiversity includes small organisms, large organisms, and different biological levels. Small organisms like bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and while large organisms like plants, fish, mammals, and the different biological levels or the categories is genes, species, and ecosystems. Now, let's talk about the biodiversity and the biosphere. The biosphere contains countless living organisms, which means this is maybe millions or billions. These organisms are interconnected and depend on each other. Means that no organisms can live without the other. Biodiversity acts as a life support system for humans. This also means that we humans cannot live without biodiversity. This means that all living things are interdependent. Biodiversity is defined from the 1992 Convention. During the Convention on Biological Diversity held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992, biodiversity is defined as the variety among living organisms. It includes terrestrial, marine, and aquatic ecosystems. It covers diversity within a species, diversity between species, and diversity of ecosystems. It is also defined according to the IUCN in 1998. So according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, biodiversity includes variety of species, differences within populations, different life forms, interactions between species, and ecological processes that support life.
Good day everyone, I am Jan Justin Abaya, and for today, we will talk about the types of biodiversity. First is species diversity. This refers to the variety of species living in a particular area. It includes species richness, which is the number of different species, and the species abundance, which is the number of individuals in each species. A healthy ecosystem usually has many different species living in balance. High species diversity helps keep ecosystems stable and functioning properly. Second is ecosystem diversity. This refers to the variety of ecosystems found on Earth. Ecosystems can be terrestrial like forests and grasslands or aquatic like oceans and rivers. Different regions of the world have different ecosystems because of the climate and geography. For example, temperate regions have forests that experience 4 seasons, while equatorial regions have tropical rainforests with wet and dry seasons. Arctic regions have organisms adapted to very cold temperatures. Each ecosystem supports different kinds of life. And lastly, genetic diversity refers to the variety of genes within a species. Every individual except identical twins has a unique combination of genes. High genetic diversity helps a population adapt to changes such as climate change or disease. Low genetic diversity can make a population more vulnerable and increase the risk of extinction.
Hi, I am John Mark D. Banay. I am going to talk about the interactions of three types of biological diversity, which contains the interdependence, genetic makeup, and the ecosystem.
Here in this slide, we will talk about the three concentric circles. The first one is the core or the genetic diversity. These are the individual blueprints or DNA variations within a single species, meaning there is a variation of DNA in a single species only. Why does it matter? It has the raw material for survival. The more genetic variations a population has, the better it can handle changes like diseases or climate shifts. The middle layer or the species diversity. This one refers to the variety of different species living within a habitat. This reminds us that these species don't just exist in a vacuum. They are built from the core genetic diversity we just talked about. Last is the outer layer or the ecosystem diversity. This is the largest circle represents ecosystem diversity such as rainforests, deserts, or coral reefs. This is the dictator, or what does means by dictator? As the text mentions, the ecosystem dictates who gets to live there. For example, a desert ecosystem selects species with specific genetic traits, like a cactus' ability to store water to survive the extreme heat in a desert.
Hi, my name is Jermaine Cedric M. Medina. My topic is all about distribution of biodiversity.
Climate. Biodiversity affects climate at local, regional, and global levels. Consequently, modification in land use and land cover that affects biodiversity can affect climate. Altitude affects the biodiversity in an inverse manner. Low altitudes are more diverse than higher altitudes. This happens because as we move up, the atmosphere becomes less dense, and because of the shortage of oxygen, fewer species are able to sustain life at higher altitudes. Soils are complex system. Organisms living in a soil and the mineral and the nutrient components act together to produce high diversity and complexity, feeding back to biodiversity richness through the habitat and nutrient provision. Presence of other species. Organisms interact with their organism in ecosystem. These interactions such as predation, parasitism, communalism, and other symbolic relationship maybe have a beneficial or harmful effects to the biodiversity of an area.
Think of biodiversity hotspot like a global emergency room. These are the most important places on Earth, but they are also the most dangerous. Good morning everyone. For today's topic, we will talk about the biodiversity hotspot.
Rule number 1. It's one of a kind. It must have at least 1,500 plant species that exist nowhere else on Earth. These are called endemic species, meaning if they disappear, they're disappearing forever. Rule number 2. It's in trouble. At least 70% of its original habitat, forest, wetlands, grasslands must already be destroyed. So hotspot isn't just a special, it is special and endangered. These are 36 biodiversity hotspots worldwide. Here's what's shocking. They cover only 2.5% of Earth's land, a tiny slice of a global pizza. Yet, they contain over 50% of all plant species on Earth. They're nearly half of all birds, mammals, and reptiles.
A small space, huge life. Right now, scientists are using AI and satellite tracking to discover what they call a micro hotspot. Tiny hidden forests, patches we didn't even know were biodiversity treasure chests.
One of the most important hotspots is the Philippines. The good news? It's home of thousands of endemic species, including the majestic Philippine eagle, one of the most rarest eagles on Earth. The bad news is deforestation and development have heavily reduced its natural forest. If habitat disappear here, those species don't relocate. They vanish from the planet forever.
Hello everyone, I am Ryan Joshua Zundaga, and we will talk about the 4 benefits of biodiversity.
The first one is provides food and medicine. Biodiversity gives us a wide variety of food such as fruits, vegetables, fish, and meat. Many medicines come from plants, animals, and microorganisms found in nature. Without biodiversity, we would lose important sources of nutrition and life-saving drugs. Number 2. Maintains ecosystem balance. Different species work together to keep ecosystems stable and healthy. Predators control animal populations, while plants produce oxygen and absorbs carbon dioxide. This balance helps prevent environmental problems and support life on Earth. And number 3, support clean air and water. Forests, oceans, and plants help clean the air by absorbing harmful gases. Wetlands and natural systems filter pollutants from water sources. Biodiversity ensures we have access to fresh air and safe drinking water. Number 4, which is the last benefit, boost the economy. Many industries depend on biodiversity, including agriculture, fisheries, tourism, and medicine. Natural resources create jobs and provide income for millions of people worldwide. Protecting biodiversity helps ensure long-term economic stability.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Ayola and my topic is all about threats of biodiversity. Let's talk about 2 categories of threats, which is number 1, natural causes, and number 2, anthropogenic human causes.
So let's talk about the first categories, which is the natural disasters. Number 1, narrow geographical area. It is a smaller habitat, support fewer species, and increase extinction risk. Number 2, low population. Fewer individuals reduce reproduction and genetic diversity. Number 3, low breeding rate. Slow reproduction makes population recovery difficult. And number 4, natural disasters. Floods, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions destroy habitats and kill species. So now, let us move on the anthropogenic or human causes of biodiversity loss. First, the alteration and destruction of ecosystem. Human activities such as deforestation, land conversion, and dam construction damage natural habitats. Because of this, many species lose their homes and sources of food, which affect their survival. Next is the hunting and exploitation of animals. Practices like overhunting, overfishing, and illegal wildlife trade reduce the population of many species and may eventually lead to extinction. Another factor is agricultural practices. The excessive use of pesticide can kill important organisms like pollinators, while converting natural land into farms destroy the natural habitats of different species. Lastly, the introduction of exotic species can also threaten biodiversity. Non-native species compete with native species for food and shelter, which can harm or even eliminate native organisms. In addition, climate change also affects biodiversity. It modifies natural habitats, causes coral bleaching, and affects the migration patterns of animals. Next is tourism.
Irresponsible tourism can make damage ecosystem and exceed the carrying capacity of the environment, leading to environmental degradation. Lastly, ignorance or lack of awareness about environmental conservation leads to poor conservation efforts, which further threatens biodiversity.
So let's move on to recently identified endangered species. First on the list is the Solenangus empedrecta, which is identified in 2024 as a critically endangered epiphytic orchid from central Madagascar. It holds the record for the longest nectar spore, approximately 33 cm, relative to its small 2 cm flower size. It is pollinated by long-tongued hawkmoots and is threatened by mining activities. Next is the Nepenthes megastoma, which is described as a new species from Puerto Princesa Subterranean River National Park. This carnivorous tropical beacher plant is currently known from the just 3 locations in the Mount St. Paul Karst Formation, where it grows on vertical limestone walls. It is assessed as critically endangered under the IUCN Red List criteria, based on its restriction to 3 subpopulations comprising few total individuals. Pulailipis is a genus of small trees that thrive at extreme elevations in the Andes, marking the uppermost limit of forest growth and the transition to alpine grasslands. These trees form unique forests in harsh, cold environments, providing critical habitats for rare birds and mammals. This new plant species of Closia is named for its slender, willow-like leaves, which are an uncommon feature for plants in this genus. The genus Drymonia, found in tropical America, is known for its incredible variety of flower shapes, fruit types, and growth habits. This new Drymonia species is the only one in the group that grows on the ground and has unusually flatted flowers. Its evolution is linked to the rise of the Andes around 5 to 12 million years ago, a time that gave rise to many distinct plant species in the region. A Hawaiian moth species described in 2026, known only from a small isolated grove of sandalwood trees. Despite their small size, leaf roller moths have proven to be one of the most effective long-distance travelers among any native Hawaiian animals. Next is Balithemis campalidi. This new species of shearmouse is easily distinguished from its relatives in both craniodental and external characteristics, including a long, narrow snout, small eyes and ears, short, dark, dense fur dorsally and ventrally, stout body, with a tapering, visibly haired tail shorter than head and body length, stout forepaws. Next is Kodama jujutsu. It is a tiny species of pygmy squid around the size of a fingernail, discovered in Japan's Ryukyu Islands and described in 2023, named after Japanese three spirits Kodama and the martial art jujutsu. Also, one of the recently identified endangered species is a newly discovered supergiant deep-sea isopod species found near Vietnam's Spratly Islands in the South China Sea, named for its head-resembling Darth Vader's helmet. Identified in 2025, this scavenger reaches over 32.5 cm in length and weighs over 1 kg, making it a supergiant species. Also one is Marmosa chachapuya. Diagnostic morphological traits of the new species include gray-based buffy reddish ventral fur without a mid-ventral zone of self-whitish fur. Now let's move on to recently extinct species. One of these is Taudactylus acoterostris. Although the exact cause of this species extinction is not verified, the IUCN lists its threats as mining, lagging, and invasive species. Given that the sharp-snouted day frog shared a similar habitat to the mountain mist frog in Australia, there is a good chance that a bad fungus played a role in this animal's extinction. Next is a slender-billed curlew, which is extinct in 2025. Extensive searches for any remaining slender-billed curlews were conducted, but there have been no sightings since the mid-1990s. Extinction was declared as highly probable in 2024 and made official by the IUCN in October 2025. The latest edition of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's Red List, the world's most comprehensive global inventory on an extinction risk, has declared the Christmas Island shrew is extinct. Shrews are small, long-nosed, insect-eating mammals, with many species widely distributed across Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Also, one of the extinct species is the Campipilus principalis, which is declared as extinct in 2021. Once widespread throughout the southeastern United States and separately in Cuba. The charismatic ivory-billed woodpecker went extinct primarily due to the logging of bottomland hardwood forests, its main habitat, and the ruthless action of collectors in the early 20th century. Also declared as an extinct species is Leucops ocrarius in 2023. With no considered sightings since 1988, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service formally delisted the species from the Endangered Species Act in October 23 due to its extinction, following decades of the decline caused by habitat loss, invasive predators, and mosquito-borne diseases. Also, one of the recently extinct species is Saxicolella dinis. Known as the Orchid of the Falls, this plant was collected in 2018 in Guinea, but by its formal description in May 2022, it was already extinct due to the construction of a hydroelectric dam that flooded by its habitat in late 2021. Last to the recently extinct species is Lepidium omicium. It is an extinct, succulent, perennial herb formerly endemic to the coastal sea cliffs of the Waitakere Ranges in West Auckland, New Zealand. Described in 2013, it was a globulous herb found on cliffs. In conclusion, biodiversity is more than just the variety of life on Earth. It is the foundation of a healthy environment and a healthy society. By understanding its meaning, types, distribution, hotspots, benefits, and current threats, we see how closely biodiversity is connected to human health and community well-being. The increasing number of endangered species and extinct species from 2021 to 2026 reminds us that conservation is urgent. Through awareness, biodiversity mapping, and responsible action, we can help protect our environment and ensure a sustainable future for the next generations.